studio is none other Pastor Holland Gregg from Eastside Community Church, one of our favorite people on the planet.
Hello.
And also from the Cody Sparks band, Mr. Cody Sparks. Welcome back, Cody.
Still here.
And then Adrienne Plek, my sweet, very caring, and very submissive wife is also here today. Thank you, Adrienne, for joining us. All right, and we're talking about an issue that has been near and dear to Adrienne's heart. Let's talk about it. What's that issue, Adrienne?
Oh, it's not near and dear to my heart.
Oh, it's just been up on your...
It's just been up on our radar recently because we've had some people asking questions. And, you know, sometimes people assume that I have knowledge because I'm married to you, but that's usually a false assumption.
Oh, okay. Well, what was the question?
So the question was... Do we really, why do we really think that women have a role within the church and within their marriages that is to be submissive and to be, followers of the male headship? Like, why do we, there's a lot of other things that the Bible says that we don't take literally. Why do we take that literally? And we should just read the Bible for ourselves and discover for ourselves what it really says. And to which I have responded with, I feel like the Bible is pretty clear. And the areas where the Bible does have cultural comments that are not relevant to the times of today, there's a very clear explanation as to why we are not currently following those things. It's not that we just pick and choose what we follow. It's that we actually, there's very legitimate theological explanation as to why we have ditched some things. For example, we are not requiring that women wear head coverings at church.
Right.
And we've ditched that one, and we feel okay with that. And it's not because we've just picked and chosen. It's because we have theological understanding. So that has been
the
our
theological the head covering one I thought was great. When we preached through 1 Corinthians 11 forever ago, we talked about anytime a Jewish person would pray, they would put a hat on. And so it couldn't have been, unless there was an explicit thing about that, beyond that, that's not what it meant. It said, don't wear women's head coverings when praying. In other words, men, don't dress like women. Women, don't dress like men. Be distinct in the God-given role that you are and live that out to the best of your ability. And so I do think that is important, or else we should be wearing, or ladies should be wearing head coverings if that wasn't true. But that's clearly not what that scripture meant. So I do appreciate you pointing that out, because I think there's lots of things Old Testament, if I think people go how come we're not wearing polyester, or how come we're not, why are we not banning non-kosher food? Because ultimately, doesn't the Bible say, and so you've just picked and chosen, you don't like gay people, so therefore you go to all the passages of Leviticus and you highlight those, say, see, sexual morality, and then all the ones that say don't wear polyester, that's dumb, that has no relevance. That is picking and choosing, unless there is a theological reason for it, that Jesus came to fulfill the Mosaic law, which made Israel distinct. And so when Jesus comes to the cross, he does away with the distinction of Israel and the rest of the planet, saying, listen, there is no longer what you have to do in order to be a part of God's people. The moral law has always been there, and it continues even beyond that. So it's not like Jesus says, hey, don't worry about sexual morality. He reinforces sexual morality in the same way the Levitical laws would have upheld it. So I do think there's some reality there that I think we need to just kind of understand, that there isn't any picking and choosing that we're doing just based upon our own feelings, but rather we are reading God's word and understanding when Paul gets upset and frustrated with people about circumcision, he's talking not just about the act of circumcision, but all the ceremonial law that goes along with circumcision as being the thing that's hindering them from a genuine faith in Christ, because you're having to add something to your faith. Okay. So, Holland, I'm so glad you're here. I know that you've had a little bit of discussion about this issue in your pastoring work.
Of course.
So talk to me about really where you feel like the big issue hits, where people get offended on this issue.
Okay. So I would say... actually, let me bring this up. I don't want to totally derail everything, but so you brought up head coverings. So
all right,
I think this is an interesting one, actually.
They're kind of like denim skirts for the
Oneness Pentecostals. Yeah, kind of.
Anyways, carry on.
Do y'all know head coverings were kind of the norm in American Christianity up until the 50s and 60s.
Right.
And do y'all know what kind of triggered the like rejection of head coverings?
No, what was it?
Let me share this. This is interesting. I think it's relevant.
Okay,
So,
I love it.
This is from, so y'all know the name Betty Friedan? Friedan.
I have heard of that
One of the leaders in second wave feminism.
Nice.
She was the president of the National Organization of Women.
Yep.
And in December 1968, said, because the wearing, this is to her organization,
right.
because the wearing of a head covering by women at religious services is a symbol of subjection with many churches, now, National Organization for Women, recommends that all chapters undertake an effort to have all women participate in a national unveiling by sending their head coverings to the task force chairman.
Wow.
At the spring meeting of the Task Force of Women and Religion, these veils will be publicly burned to protest the second-class status of women in all churches.
That's wild.
So this was an explicit part of second-wave feminism, which a big part of feminism was it was supportive. She was supportive. The leaders were supportive of the sexual revolution, of abortion,
yep.
And a lot of these things are connected. The reason I bring it up is to say, understanding the context we're in now, a lot of where we are today culturally is really shaped by feminism.
Right.
And feminism, a lot of, I was taught in school growing up, all the good things about feminism and women having equal rights and things was not really taught that so much of feminist activism was really steeped in hatred of God and his word and rejection of the Bible and its norms. And that one of the core, so this is offensive. Everything I'm saying right now, I'm like,
come
this
on,
is offensive people.
Bring the offense.
So here's a core principle to feminism, and it is that male and female are essentially interchangeable,
right,
or functionally interchangeable,
right.
And that concept right there is at the heart of where a lot of things that we are today we see in merit. So you take that principle, apply it to an individual person, male and female, functionally interchangeable, you get transgenderism. Mm-hmm. Take that principle, apply it to sex, you get homosexuality, male and female interchangeable, right? Take that concept, that principle, and apply it to the family or the church, you get egalitarianism. Where, it doesn't matter if husband or wife leads, or if one is the head or the other one is, or, it's the idea of taking a biblical truth that you're equal in value and then adding something unbiblical that you're equal in every way and totally interchangeable and indistinguishable.
Right.
That was a core feature of feminism that has now shaped everything about our culture and the way that we think about gender, sex, marriage, church, all of that. And so we've got to understand that, but to bring that up is where it's very offensive to people.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also interesting how the fundamentals of feminism have, like you just said, developed the current culture that we're living in, which happens to be a culture very unfavorable to women. Like very recently, we're seeing how that when you remove the uniqueness of women, there is no value of them. And so there is no value to support them in helping and assisting in the raising of children, or in the birthing of having the children, or in even in athletics, like a female that is, gifted athletically, that wants to compete. Well, now there's really not opportunity there, because we have just washed the entire race, or not race. We've washed the entire gender out of it.
Yeah,
and
right.
We have, and that makes it something now that women have it's not fun. It's not something, it's almost removed it as an option for women. You can't compete and come up against men. And so I think it's interesting how something that was created years ago to bring value to women has actually been the number one thing to devalue and kind of remove women from a place in society.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So what is the biblical role then? I think this is where, we had a paper come out about this because we wanted to make sure that we were clear. I think what was hard, back before COVID, this was just something that we just all assumed church people. Maybe that's the wrong way to put it. I just sort of assumed church people got. It was like, it was written. You didn't really preach about it that much. It was just sort of reality. Everyone sort of understood it. And then all of a sudden, when I watched the culture flip, I was like, uh-oh, we need to teach this. This is no longer something that you just sort of like, it's like your crazy drunk uncle that you keep in the kitchen during dinner parties. It's like you need to bring out the truth because it's not only good, it's God's design, and if you don't talk about it, then other people will have a voice and opinion about the matters which are of the utmost importance, maybe not of salvation, but of church polity and then of the dignity of the human race and how God designed humanity, which becomes ultimately super important. And so I think that's the division that happened created for me an absolute need for us to be really clear about this.
Yeah, and I don't think it was COVID. I think that COVID happened to align really in sync with when progressive Christianity was taking flight. Yeah. And progressive Christianity was coming at women in a way that was a bit empowering initially.
Yeah, because I think for you told me once, like when the Rachel Hollis, the Jen Hatmaker, originally, if you were married to me, you would have been swept away with that. That's what you've told me.
Yeah, I would have been swept away. But let me just go back to what was I think good about them. I can't speak to Rachel Hollis, but I can to Jen Hatmaker originally. Yeah. Back when I was having in the throes of like my first 2 years of motherhood, right. It was very hard, and we were having a lot of just basic challenges of like just sleeping and eating. We couldn't get either one of those things figured out. Okay, and it was like it wrecked me to my core because I had taken on this like value of my role as a woman to be a nurturer of my children, and I really valued that. That was something I had I would say I idolized most of my life, and so here I was, and I think God's love for me was to remove it from being an idol and instead call me to just obedience without the idolatry aspect. And I think by making it as painful as it was, it helped me displace it from its idolatry. But in that process, I was struggling and exhausted and hurting and struggling with how my struggle fit within our marriage, because I think I needed more help from you, but I felt really committed that my role was to just support you by never needing you, which was bad thinking. Right. But I believed that, and so I didn't want to ask for help or even receive help because it felt like that was an insult to my role and my position. And anyway, I was in the throes of wrestling with that and struggling and kind of failing. And I didn't have very many friends at the time in my stage. I think that I was in a weird stage of like, most of my closest friends from high school and college did not have children yet. And then the other friends I had were not having kids yet. And it was just a weird stage. And so Jen Hatmaker had this book that was like phenomenal. It was funny. It was so well written. And she was all about the gospel at the time. Like she was all about our strength being in Jesus and him giving us the strength that we need, and what we're doing, our mundane tasks of motherhood are ways that we are actually serving God because we're being obedient to God and we're serving our children and we're serving our husbands. And like this is a valuable role. It's a kingdom impacting role. And we need to see beyond the diapers and the sleepless nights into what is happening through us, through this. It was incredible. It was this incredible message. And she could do it with humor and she just was gifted. Jen Hatmaker is very gifted.
Still gifted, probably.
Yes. And so it was like, I was completely like swept away by, and kind of given life in a season where I was kind of lonely and struggling. And, but then very slowly that message swayed away from the value of your role at home. And then like the very first IF gathering, I will never forget the very first IF gathering, because I was in this stage I just described, and I'm there and I'm one of the only young moms at it. Right. And everyone's watching the TV screen as these women are wearing all this like cool jewelry from Africa, and everyone's talking about how we just need to, like, as women, we can be about more, and we can all go to Africa and sell jewelry, as though that's like an ultimate, as though that was like this greater than calling. As if like being a mother and a parent at home, or even just a wife at home, like it just being in the United States was somehow a less than, and doing something that is impacting Africa is superior, and not just good but superior. And also it was a bunch of moms on the stage, which I knew. I don't know if anyone else was like paying attention to that, that. But I'm in my head, I'm like, they have young kids at home. It's not, these people didn't all have high school age children. These people had young kids at home, and they're talking about their trips to Africa and this jewelry that they're selling and the impact that they're making. And in my head, I'm like, what's happening right now? Like, we're sending this message to women that like the work that they're doing at home is secondary to something better that they could be doing if only they could just believe in themselves and if only they could just aspire for more. And I was like, and none of them were married to lead pastors.
Right.
So part of me was like, what the heck? like me aspiring to more, and so my husband can come sit at the
Although Jen Hatmaker was.
She was at the time.
And then.
Yeah, she was.
Isn't.
Right. And that's a good point. But she wasn't, I would say she wasn't a part of this necessarily, this one moment. But what was interesting to me is that it was like very clear to me that under no circumstance could you coming into my home and sitting with our baby while I go off to Africa, under no circumstance was that the bigger win for us and for our ministry and for kingdom expansion. And so to hear that message coming across was uncomfortable to me. And then over the years, the If Gathering, I think, has full circled back into a really healthy place.
Okay.
But before it did, there was this like a little bit of progressive Christianity that was kind of twisted in there for the next couple of years. And that message was to women, and it was to basically become something that fits outside of this design of being a mom and being a supporter of your husband. And I think the heart behind it was like, it's okay for us to have a job. It's okay for us to work. It's okay for us to aspire to things, which nobody's disagreeing with.
Right.
But it was the fact that like, that's an ultimate,
right.
And that's if you really value yourself, you're going to get outside of your home. And I was like, man, to me, that was just the most anti-biblical message that we could have.
So I think the biblical message then is, and this is where this is the part where I think it's become a dividing line in Christianity today. It is, what roles are women allowed to have within the church as a whole? Like that becomes the question. And I think you and I have seen recently, like Jenny Allen speaking at some things, and I felt uncomfortable by it. I was like, I've been a Jenny Allen fan. And then all of a sudden she's preaching at a church with a mixed audience, authoritative teaching, kind of going for it. And I was like, crud. What is the response to that? And there's this reality, like, what does the scripture say about that? And I think that's helpful for us to get into, not so that we could create division, but so that we'd have some wisdom on this, because I think we just go to 1 Timothy chapter 2 is where this really comes up. And I think Holland and I have talked about this a lot. And Holland, I'm going to read this and I want you to comment on it. This is Paul writing, I desire that in every place that men should pray, lifting holy hands without anger or quarreling. Likewise, also that women should adorn themselves in respectable apparel with modesty and self-control, not with braided hair and gold or pearls or costly attire, but with what is proper for women who profess godliness, with good works. Let women learn quietly with all submissiveness. I do not permit a woman to teach or to exercise authority over a man. Rather, she is to remain quiet. For Adam was formed first, then Eve, and Adam was not deceived, but the woman was deceived and became a transgressor. Yes, she will be saved through childbearing if they continue in faith and love and holiness with self-control. I think that, when you read that, like in America today, that makes everybody uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Like when you say like
uncomfortable. Yes. Yeah. That is not even not even offering an interpretation. Just straight up reading the Bible is offensive when you read that passage. And I think what Paul is teaching here, and what Adrienne is talking about the home and the value of the home, I think are related to one another, and go all the way back to creation and God's purpose for us as humans and as male and female. And it sounds so wild and crazy and offensive to us today, again, because we have grown up in a culture that has prized this idea that male and female are functionally interchangeable. Right. And that there is no real substantial difference, and anything a man can do, a woman should be able to do as well, and vice versa. And it's just simply not how God created things. In this verse, you notice he gives gendered instructions. the men should do this, the women should do this. He doesn't explain it that much in the beginning, right? He just kind of assumes that you agree, like, yeah, men should do this, women should do this. He gives even to the end where he talks about authority and teaching, and the defense he gives for it is not some cultural phenomenon going on there in Ephesus where Timothy was stationed. He brings it back to the garden and God's creation of male and female, and an event that happened, right? Adam was formed first. That's his first part. Adam was not deceived. The woman was. And then verse 15, the one that confuses a lot of people, she'll be saved through childbearing. We know we're saved in terms of like justified by grace through faith, right?
Yeah.
But the idea is, saved can have past, present, and future implications, right? You've
Sanctification, glorification. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you think of this in terms of sanctification, that a woman's role, is
sanctifies her intensely
through something that is unique to women that he names here, childbearing. A man can't. We are not the same. You cannot have a baby.
I've tried. Like, it's just not going to happen. There's no baby coming out of me.
And not going to happen. Your body is not made for that.
I don't think you tried, but that's funny still, though. Yeah. Kind of had an image in my head.
I guess.
Yeah. He points to what's unique about the woman here and says that, and what's unique about the man, and that a man has been given, a different kind of body where you don't have a uterus. You can't birth and nurture a child, but you do have bigger muscles and bones and things that are meant for you to be a protector and a provider. And so, for that's related to teaching and authority.
Yeah, and I like how he says in verse 8, men should pray lifting holy hands without anger or quarreling, meaning the stuff that usually gets paraded around is the toxic masculinity label of like bad men. We're not talking about bad men, like godly men lifting holy hands in prayer, and then also not quarreling, not leading from anger, but leading from love. And so, and then it gets to the women's propensity, not all women, but have a desire to look at me and how I look. My value is in how I look, not in my essential, my profession of godliness of good works. I think there's that natural, like the one thing that's always cool for a man to be is angry. Like nobody, like that is sort of like a badge of honor is the angry man. You might say that guy's a good leader in the military, at least. Like someone's anger was what propelled them to great victory and great leadership and had high expectations. That's what anger, in a sense, came with anger. But I think with women, beauty and wealth and attire, that's like the world's way of saying this is a quality woman. And what God's saying is no, it's a man of prayer, which is meekness, surrender. Isn't that wild? And then a woman who's good works, and then seeing ultimately the only thing a woman can do, the only thing a man cannot do. Men, you are not allowed to do childbearing, and nobody's arguing that. Even today, like in the
some people argue.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so, for the most part, but they would say without some operations, you're not going to produce a kid out of your body. Fair? Naturally, that would just not happen. Even though we can kind of conjure it up so we can kind of live out this.
I beg to differ. Have you ever seen Twins? Not Twins.
I know which movie. Arnold Schwarzenegger.
It's Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah.
Gosh.
When he gets pregnant. Dang it.
What movie was that? Anyway.
Gosh. Anyways, carry on.
I do feel like that's where we're living in, and I think this passage is not. This passage is showing how great women are, as they're the only ones that can bear children.
Right, and I think also what you just hit on, I think the anger, I think what you just described was masculinity and femininity, and our culture kind of has masculinity in this way. Like anger is not leadership. Maybe in the army it felt like it was. It's not.
Right.
If you're angry, so that's horrible.
You're out of
that's
control.
Not leadership.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, that's. So I think that there's this idea that
it's not ideal, but it is effective. It gets people to live. It's by fear. You're ruling by fear, which is not good.
You might be
Machiavellian leadership.
You might be effective in getting people to like hurry up
to do what they're supposed to do.
You probably aren't accomplishing your goal.
Absolutely.
You probably aren't, because
you're right.
If you're doing it emotionally and flippantly and in your heat of emotion, it's not happening effectively.
Right.
And so I think femininity is not just beauty. There's plenty of women out there with lots of money for lots of plastic surgery, and that has not created That's not them being feminine in the way that God has designed femininity. And so
Right.
I think that that matters. And I think going back to like what Holland, before we hopped on this podcast, we were discussing like that the Bible, there's a lot of Christians that would argue that when a man is in sin, he goes passive. And I think a lot of men do have a tendency to go passive. When there's an opportunity for leadership, their tendency is to acquiesce to typically a controlling, manipulative woman who's got it, right?
Okay, and the phrase that we use for that is happy wife, happy life. So do whatever you need to do just to shut her up and make her happy, which is the most patronizing, the most like almost like denigrating thing you could do is like, listen, I know she won't shut up until I just appease her with whatever this thing is. So I'm going to do whatever I need to so I can live my life separate of her and not have to deal with that sort of issue, and I can move on because I really don't want to have to deal with her. And that sounds weird to me, just relationally. So we need to quit saying happy wife, happy life. What we need to say is like, I don't know, the blessed life comes from leading your wife. I don't know. Like,
but I do think it's like there's this tendency to go passive for some men, and sometimes it's very legitimate. Like you've had a wife that's criticized you every single time you took initiative, and that's very hard to overcome for anybody, right? So I think passivity. But then Holland was speaking to, because I said, not all men. When presented with this opportunity for godly leadership, not all men struggle as to go passive. Some are going into this aggressive form of leadership. So Holland, can you explain like the other side of passivity that is still disobedient to God's design is an abuse of power? Could you explain that?
Yeah, the key difference between male and female that we see in nature and in Scripture is, I think, this male strength and female beauty and gentleness, right? Mm-hmm. And so Scripture is clear to say what male strength is meant for and what it's not meant for, and what true feminine beauty is and what it isn't. It's not gold earrings and costly attire. It's 1 Peter 3 says, let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart with the imperishable beauty of a gentle, quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious.
In other words, order your clothes from Temu.
You see what godly beauty looks like, right? Here's what, and then you see what godly masculinity looks like, and it's strength used for the good of others, to protect, provide, and preside. This the 3 P's that I use. And so what passivity and aggression, selfish aggression is a corruption of male strength. It's a man either not using his strength when he should, that's passivity. He should be able to use it to care for others, to lead, to provide, to help build others up and help them grow. So not using his strength for good would be abdication, passivity. Or aggression is to use his strength for selfish gain, to abuse or oppress or be domineering. And so both of those are corruptions of male strength that is meant to be used for sacrificially loving others.
And I think we talked about this. Somebody had texted you and said, well, I think a woman should be able to talk to her husband about like issues she sees in the home.
Right. So I guess the way this then plays out for women specifically, like where does our role fall? And I think there's an important emphasis on that we're not lesser in value. And so what that means is like God is speaking to us through the Scripture. The Holy Spirit is speaking to us. And so then in the partnership of a marriage, it is our role to speak into decisions within the home and to speak into concerns with the kids or concerns with the male leadership, even like to be able to come respectfully and not necessarily like respectfully because that's how we are to behave
no matter
in
what.
any context.
Yeah, right.
But to come respectfully with concerns as to even decisions within the leadership. And I think at the end of the day, there is a responsibility that women have, like, to acquiesce to the leadership of their husband, but that doesn't have to come without feedback and without
I think that you go 1 Peter 3:7, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman as the weaker vessel, since they're heirs with you of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered. So here's what God does. He says, men, I've built you bigger, stronger, faster. If you do not humble yourself and listen and interact with your wife to understand her, seek first to understand her before you are understood, then you are not living with her in an understanding. And your prayer, he will like kibosh your prayers. He will say, I'm not going to hear your prayers because you're not living with your wife the way that I've designed you to show Jesus Christ to the world, which is why ultimately your marriage isn't about being happy. It's about, okay, you're allowed to be happy. Can I just say that? I don't want to go like you should be in misery. But ultimately, the joy that you should feel in your marriage is like Jesus. It was for the joy that was set before him that he endured the cross. So he goes for joy because he loves his church in the same way I love my bride. And there is nothing more exciting for me than to lay down my life for her in a way that honors God because it reflects the gospel. And if I don't do that, then I don't understand the gospel. And of course, you have seen tyrannical parents. For those, I didn't grow up really in a church world. Cody, you grew up more church world, and I'm sure you saw tyrannical, maybe not your parents because they were awesome, but tyrannical men like interacting with their wives in a way that was not God honoring, and their prayers, if God things were happening in their life, it wasn't because of those husbands' prayers. And in fact, I would say their lives were probably smaller and smaller and smaller and harder and harder and harder because their leadership wasn't Christ-like, it was worldly.
Accurate. I mean, I always thought that there was always more women at events or things because the men were out working.
Right.
Or like oil field.
Yeah.
It always seemed like the women were more worshiping in the church and more like potent sometimes. Yeah. And I always thought there was that lack of, there were men in the church that were doing that, but I always thought that it was interesting that there was more women there than husbands that would come to events and like worship night or even church in general. They'd come, but it wasn't as much as the women would be there.
And we've seen a shift in that.
We've talked about that. Right.
Where we have more men now in worship than we do women, which is sort of wild.
It's wild.
And I think that's because where else are men being affirmed as men saying like, you guys are designed to lead. We are going to have an empty chair if you guys don't step up. Mm-hmm. And that should, be like,
I would also say, I'm sorry, I interrupted.
But I think that should be the calling on men to like, oh, that's my chair, my role to assume. Just like no man is thinking, how come I can't bear children? Like there shouldn't be a sense of like, I'm missing out because I don't get to do that. It's like God's design for you is to lead, bear the weight of the responsibility of a family or of a church or of organizationally, and then lovingly show that servant leadership to your wife. Go ahead.
Well, I also think Cody, what you're describing in a church that's dominated by women worshiping, whose husbands are hard workers, masculine men who are probably not spiritually leading their families, but they are providing for their families. Right. And so in that context, you have women who are desperate for love and for comfort and for hope and for leadership that they're getting spiritually, that they're getting from God. And so for them to show up to worship is their time to really connect and feel seen and feel known, and it's especially intense. I mean, that's true for any wife, married to a great husband or not. Right. But it's especially intense if what you go home to is not a man that is like very in tune and very sensitive or listening or engaging or leading. Like you're needing, as a female, you're wanting those things, especially bad, and you're getting them spiritually. And I think in our culture today, the message to women is like, get outside, let's move on from the home. Let's move on from the kids. Like, let's make sure dad understands that he was 50-50 in making these kids. And let's get out and go do things and take charge of things. And I think when you tell women that that's your new goal, because again, it's not wrong. I feel like it's very important for me to emphasize it's not wrong I don't believe for a woman to to have a corporate job, to have a medically impressive, for a female to be a doctor,
Yeah,
great.
doctor.
There's a context in which you can absolutely carry that out and continue to carry out the God's design for you as women. Those are not mutually exclusive things. But what I think does matter, when the culture's message is your goal is outside the home and your significance is made more outside the home, when that's the message,
right.
Well, then I like coming spiritually to God to get leadership and to feel known and to feel like we've convinced ourselves we're above that and we don't need that. And our job is to conquer more and to control more and to get more things done and to crush it more in our different areas. And we don't really have time to come sit and worship God when that's kind of this inconvenience to what we are ultimately trying to accomplish with our life.
Yeah. So Holland, you've seen culturally just a backlash, but pastoring in Austin, we see this. Some of the effects of, I guess, the feminism, I think where people, like even feminists would say it's gone too far. Like J.K. Rowling, a big time feminist, the Harry Potter author, she would say like, whoa, didn't expect it to go this far to where we've said it's so interchangeable that gender is interchangeable and now you've lost women completely. Where have you seen, just maybe even with in some instances within the church, where you've seen it abandoned so much that's almost surprisingly not recognizable the roles that men and women had before? You think my question kind of complicated?
Yeah. One more time.
How have you seen the culture progress to a point where it's like, wow, I never thought we'd get here?
Okay, I see.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. That makes. You said it fine. I was trying to track with you, but I think just in general, the principle here is that applies to a lot of different things. Is when you reject God's word. You often don't think it's good. Sin always says like, "Hey, I only want to go this far."
Right.
And it always takes you way further than you thought you were going to go. Same idea for rejecting. So, where a lot of this is rooted in rejecting God's order and the fact that he has made us different. I feel like the heresies of the first few centuries were all very highly theological and spiritual, the nature of Christ, the Trinity, things like this. Today, they're really more in the natural world, in rejecting gender, sex, marriage, God's teaching
insight.
about, but really like very core things, marriage and children in the family, abortion, transgenderism, homosexuality. Those are all, a rejection of and a subversion of the very first basic commands of Scripture. God created a male and female, be fruitful and multiply. A man will leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife. Our culture rejects all of those things. We say, we interchange male and female. We subvert marriage. We want to be able to have the freedom to kill our children before they're born.
Right.
Like, what kind of backwards society, values the total subversion of God's order? And so I think what's happened is people take this idea that they haven't really thought through how much rejecting God's order in this way would totally impact and undo human society.
Right.
And
it's
so
wild.
to the point where now it's like, whoa, how did we get here? Well, we can trace back how we got here.
And so then that means, are you bringing back head coverings at your church?
I'm not. I think when it comes to head coverings, I think there's good theological arguments on either side.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't go on to, I wouldn't say any church that has head coverings is like some crazy cult church or something. I also wouldn't say a church that doesn't have them is being,
rebellious.
totally, rebellious. I think there's good arguments for both. I do think it's interesting that it was the norm up until
68
feminist leaders.
Yeah,
really. So
that's wild.
To me, the most important thing is to say, are we... What was important to Paul in that passage, which you brought up, even in the way that y'all interpret that passage, the way you explained it was gender differences matter.
They do.
And, you were saying like a man shouldn't dress like a woman and vice versa. And I think Paul's emphasis there is very clear that God has created us differently and that gender differences matter. And they actually communicate something about who God is and how he's created us to be. So when you start undoing a little bit back here, we can see the effects of it in society today. As everything's backwards, everything's upside down. People cannot define what a woman is today.
Yeah. I mean, honestly,
we're so
when
lost.
the "What Is a Woman" movie came out, it was like just define what a woman is for me. And people are like, it is whatever you want it to be. And that's when you knew we had lost reality. When you can't define a word you're using so much, where are you?
And if you can't define what a woman is, then you've already lost. What is the point of feminism?
Yeah.
If women's
there is
rights,
no
rights
feminism
for who?
if you have no woman.
So
exactly.
The movement was defeated from the beginning in the sense of it's based on a rejection. So if all it was women should be valued equally as men. Yes and amen. Okay, I want to say that. Yes and amen.
And I think every biblical
but that's
passage
not what it was
points
about.
No, it wasn't. And I
it was about rejecting God's order. And go ahead, Adrienne.
No, it was rejecting God's order for women. But I actually think the majority of the people jumping on the bandwagon were jumping on emotionally because they wanted to feel equal in value. I actually think that equal in value was the driver for probably the majority of the people that were feminists.
Right.
And the specificity of what we're after, nobody sat down and really discussed. It was like you were just emotionally charged, and everybody kind of had their own belief as to why they have a dog in the fight.
On that, well, go ahead and finish. I want to say something on that when you.
No, you should, because I was about to take it far a different direction.
Okay. What I wanted to say was there was a lot of women against feminism, against these feminist leaders, saying this is not going to be good for society. This is a rejection of God's order. It wasn't just men against it. There were women, godly women, against some of these things.
And men went passive on it.
Yes. Well, yes.
They're
and
just
so,
like, hey, honey, whatever, just please.
A driving idea behind it, going back to a lot of what you've said, Adrienne, was liberating women from the home.
Right.
Yeah.
That you should be able to have an identity outside of the home, and that you shouldn't, that at home is slavery to you and freedom is out there in the world. That's just not a biblical view of the home for men or women.
Right.
I think men today have a low view of the home as well and abdicate their responsibility to be disciple makers of their children and leaders of family worship and heads of their household to be a productive home for God's kingdom. Men are failing in their vision of the home as well.
Oh, 100%.
Oh, I think men have been failing in their vision of the home long before women, which I think is actually partially why.
Agreed.
It felt like liberating women from the home felt good because the home was a place of defeat because we needed more male leadership in the home that we didn't have.
Right. That's, the stories of the milkman weren't just stories, visiting your wife. The women were lonely. They were isolated. They desperately, without church, there was no other place for them to connect.
You could almost argue that the original problem wasn't women looking for liberation or value. It was men abdicating
It always
their
goes
role.
back. When in the garden, who did God call for? Adam, where are you?
Right.
So you can identify all the problems in feminism and how it's ruined so many things in society for conforming to God's order and his design for what's true and good and beautiful. Right. But at the end of that, you got to come back to, men have failed then.
Right, absolutely.
and that we have to own that.
Before. They did fail long before, and I think there was something I was about to say in regards to the the Proverbs 31 woman. This is something that I think as a woman who is now, for me, I think I would say I hit a point I've shared this a million times, but when we had our fourth baby, I did hit a point as kind of a ceiling within the home and was really desiring something outside of the home to exert some energy into and feel a little bit of satisfaction. The home was just this never ending
place of need.
Place of need, right. And place of redoing what you just did kind of. And so and I didn't think that was a wrong thing. But I also was okay, I have to find something that can be an outlet for me, but that also does not remove from me the ability to be what I feel like I need to be here. And so in the Proverbs 31 woman has been a really helpful, my friends and I will laugh about it at times because you can pick any career and fit it into Proverbs 31 woman. And I don't think it's a prescriptive way for no one person, I think, is being all of these things, but it's the concept of if you sleep really at all, you can't really. But
Her lamp does not go out.
The concept of being an entrepreneur, being a wheeler and dealer, being a good, there's a lot of things that the Proverbs 31 represented as a biblical way for women to be executing their healthy feminism. And it didn't just mean making everything from scratch inside of your home. It's just not what it was. It's an option. It's not. It doesn't have to be that way. And I also think, like, just to flip it and completely divert the entire conversation. But if you go to like our political realm.
Oh wow, let's go here.
When it comes to helping the poor, we've done the same thing. It's like we've taken a concept of loving, of like, let's help the poor, let's help the needy, and we've translated that as to let's remove from them their sense of duty and responsibility, and we've done that with acting as though that's going to better them. Just like we separated gender and in the effort of feminism, I feel like we have done that when it comes to taking care of the poor and needy. We have said, okay, let's rob them of their personal responsibility. Let's rob them of their any accountability, and let's just give to them. And what we have done is we've squashed them and we've ruined them as a society in the way that we've led through culture. And so now, in order to undo that, I mean, it has to start with individuals. You can't. I mean, it's hard. We've made such a mess.
You opened up a whole can of worms that I don't know if this podcast has enough time to really totally digest everything you just said right there. It's a lot. I think what the point you're trying to make is, a lot of times you look to fix something.
Right.
Like poverty is bad.
Right.
Men abdicating their leadership is bad. Women being mistreated is bad.
Well,
all that stuff.
I would say the Bible says to. Not just poverty is bad, but the Bible says help the poor and needy. The Bible also says that male and female are created equal in value.
Right.
So it's almost like there's a little bit of biblical justice that's
100%.
behind
these
efforts that get just a little bit twisted.
Right. So instead of living with your wife in an understanding way, you need to submit or just understand that whatever she says goes. I think that's where you miss it, right? I think that's where live with your wife in an understanding way, happy life, happy wife. You've taken it from live with your wife in an understanding way to like, oof, I just got to do whatever it takes to make her stop talking. I don't want to understand. It doesn't really matter if I understand. She needs to be happy.
Or to just do what I say.
Or do what I say. Like either way, you don't want to have to deal with her. You don't want to have to serve her. I think living with your wife in an understanding way is all about service. And I think that's the part that we're talking about in gender, the way that Jesus served the church. He models for us foot washing. And so husbands, how are you washing your wife's feet? Like that should be something like if Jesus is, if our marriages are to be representing Jesus in the church, then there's got to be a way that we're serving our wives in a way that truly represents Jesus' sacrificial way of demonstrating leadership. Because it's not like he abdicated leadership in that moment. And Peter's like, you're not going to wash my feet because I'm a follower. I'm not a blah, blah. And Jesus is like, if you don't do this, you have no part of me. I mean, like he still led Peter even then.
I was going to say, I think that's really important because for a lot of men, you hear the term servant leadership a lot, but the way a lot of men apply that is I trade leadership for service. Right. And that's not what Jesus did.
No,
his leadership was shaped by service, but he did not fail to lead. So a lot of men will go, okay, I serve my wife, and she's functionally the head of the home. Right. And I just said, and you are abdicating your role as a leader, a visionary, a head, the spiritual authority in the home. And there's a lot of men who are just very passive but call it servant leadership and are actually just kind of following their wife and eventually like she may enjoy that for a time, but I think the heart of every woman of every wife wants to follow a worthy man, a worthy husband who really does care for her and lead her well and to honor him and help him. And eventually, when a husband abdicates his leadership for so long, the wife becomes miserable, and so does the husband. Yeah, like it's just not how God's designed it.
I just thought of this because this comes up a lot in marriage coaching. Like when men say, "I don't care."
You're supposed to,
like you know what I mean. Like I feel like when men say, hey, where do you want to go to? I don't care what you're like. Now there's no way, and this is true for both sexes, there's no way for a woman to please her husband, and now you're putting on her a decision to make. And I know it might seem like a really generous thing to do. Where would you like to go to dinner? And you can say, hey, I want us to go to Chili's. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Well, I don't want Chili's.
Yeah. Then now. No,
but hang on. Let me retry this because this is something that I'm told a lot. I'm supposed to care. Is this when you want me to care right now? And I'm like, oh man, like yes, if you care, but if you don't care, don't tell me Chili's unless do you want to go to Chili's? And then I get this look. Yeah,
sure. Like that's called abdicating my role as a leader.
No, I don't. I think there's a way to not have a preference and to lead. I think you can have.
We are going to dinner and enjoying each other. I want to pursue you in the way that most honors you.
But I think you can say, man, I'm
excited
to take
Holland do marriage
you to dinner.
coaching?
This is where it turns into marriage. But I think it's
whiteboard.
I think there's a way to not always have the answer and always have a preference and still communicate decision-making and leadership, because ultimately, why are you going to dinner?
I want to have intimacy with my spouse. Right. We can eat anywhere.
Right. The food doesn't really.
That like day-to-day decisions is, I think a lot of wives get frustrated with their husbands because their husband doesn't have a vision for their life. Right. Not just like, oh, he doesn't provide leadership about these day-to-day decisions, but it's like, what are we doing with our lives? What are we doing with our children? Mm-hmm. You know, what purpose? What's our mission? And there's men who just like, don't think about those things. And
because who has time?
Yeah.
They're like, they can't, well, one, they can't open their Bibles as it is. And then two, you don't have time to think about your life because you're scrolling on TikTok and watching, getting your fantasy football lineup going. I think that's the reality that a lot of men face, is that we're so indoctrinated by the culture to do the thing that's right in front of us. And then as opposed to what our calling is in leadership is to look way down the road financially, way down the road spiritually, way down the road. Like, what is what we're doing now? How is that going to affect us 5, 10, 15 years now? And I think because of that, women feel really insecure about, they don't feel like their husband has a clear direction. And that's when they try to grip control of things and yank the steering wheel. And it can get very troubling. I think
it's when they get critical. I think it's when you get a lot of the outcomes that you don't desire as men. And once again, I think it goes back to that, there's a little desire for the right thing, but it gets a little bit twisted and it derails everything. And I think a husband that ultimately, I think a husband has to be living on conviction over what he ultimately wants. And I think a lot of men really do just want their wife to be happy so they don't have to really think and they don't have to really make. I think a lot of men really do desire that. And so as a man, it's having to say, okay, I'm going to choose to care and engage against what I would kind of prefer right now. And once you can convince yourself, I think, of what your role is, and you can convince yourself of a desire for that role, or pray for a God to give you a desire for that role comes across. Right. And it comes out in everything. Just like a little tweak wrong back here affects a long line of feminism, or affects a long line of helping the poor, whatever. It's a husband who has a little tweak off when it comes to his perspective of what his role is in his home, or his role. It affects all of these details and all of these things. And a date night can go from just being a checkbox to being an intimate experience of connection when the man engages it with a value and a desire for a purpose that he owns.
Right. Yeah. I think owning the purpose is huge. Because I think it's just, hey, what should we be doing? And then that indecisiveness breeds insecurity, because that's not the role you were designed for, to lead the family. It's to follow your husband.
You don't have to have all the answers. Right. You don't have to always know where you want to eat. You have to know what you're there to do and what you're there for.
This is my primary purpose is here to build intimacy with you and to let you know you're valued. Yeah, I do think that is important.
And that's going to come off, because when you don't take a shower and you can't look up from your phone, and you get in the car and you're just like, what do you want? It's like, well, that comes off. I mean, that communicates something. And so it's kind of like, oh, I don't want any, actually. I would rather go home. It's like, because what you're wanting isn't, the actions are not a means to an end. The actions are to fulfill a purpose that you're wanting the husband to own.
Right. It's good. All right. Hey, listen, man, we covered a lot. If you got any questions, I want you to text us at 737-231-0605. We do faith, culture, everything in between. I did have one other question for Cody, the Cody Sparks Band. Like, Cody, in your realm of being in the country music scene where you see the world operating, do you see like a reversal of roles even within like something that I would seemingly think is pretty conservative and traditional in country music? Or do you see it?
Well, I mean, this is where like men should go to women and ask them to dance, or men should lead dancing,
right,
or this. And sometimes that is the case. Sometimes it's not the case. It's probably the same, 50-50.
Okay.
To where
I just
you have
that.
some
like,
people
so,
that
like
are
men asking women to dance. That seems like a normal thing,
right?
But it's flipped,
right?
But then men have to lead because that's the way the dances are designed.
Exactly, correct.
And if it doesn't really work.
It doesn't. And a lot of times you have to go, hey, let me lead, follow me, or to a girl. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I don't know. You got the strong-headed bull ladies that will do it themselves. You know, it's one of those deals where you got them here, you got them there.
How about in just like beyond like the dancing scene, like the music scene, like just the like, have you seen that where women take control of things, or is that just like too hard to kind of wrap your head around?
I mean, I think it's a little. Everybody that I was involved with, I'm not. Oh gosh, this is gonna get me in trouble if this ever comes out. I'm not the biggest fan of chick singers. Like they rare. Like the rarity of them. It's my brother too. It's like 3 or 4 that I could tell you that I'm fans of. Yeah. That I really like, and the other ones I feel like they're screaming. Yeah. And they're just trying too hard. Right. So the people that I would. There was a huge push, like in the past 6 years for. Why are there not more female artists in festivals? Right. Why are they not having more shows? Why are they not this? We need to push those artists. People more, those women more. So it's like, but they're not good. Or why do you want to push that one when they're not good? There's guys out there that are doing festivals too, where you're like, why are they doing the festival? Right. Like who, kind of like we talked about earlier, there's a little bit of luck of who heard you, found you. Yeah. Like it kind of how you progress.
Someone backed you at the right time, at the right place.
But that's exactly right. So it's like you shouldn't be there at the top just because you're a female. Mm-hmm. For me, I feel that way. It's like, hey, you should work hard and you should pay your dues just like everybody else had to do.
Oh, that's interesting.
We shouldn't bump you to these certain festivals or these certain events just because you're a female.
Huh, that's wild. Okay. Holland, any other thoughts from your perspective of pastoring on the east side?
You could talk all day about this stuff, but and I think most important thing to me is that we continue to look to Scripture as our guide and not just what is popular or cultural or trendy, or not that our aim is not just to not offend anyone, and nor is it to be overly offensive and just try to be controversial or anything like that. But let's study the Word. Let's really try to understand. I think the New Testament commands can be confusing when looked at in isolation, but when you look at the testimony of Scripture as a whole, beginning from Genesis chapter 1 and creation, I think you start to see themes and connections. And so to really study all of Scripture to get a vision, a biblical vision for how God has created us, male and female, why it matters. That's what's important to me.
Well, your wife has liked this podcast, so
amazing.
So way to go.
She's the best.
She's the lone liker so far.
Love you, Jenny.
Yeah, way to go. So hey, listen, thanks so much for watching. We want to talk faith, culture, everything in between. Excited for this to be a part of your world. From our house to yours. Have an awesome week.